Chicago, 1966. The summer sizzled. The city was alive with the hum of activity, the streets bustling with people enjoying the warm weather. The air was thick with the scent of hot dogs from street vendors and the sound of children playing in the parks. But beneath this veneer of normalcy, a storm was brewing. But a different kind of heat swept through the city that July. It was a heat that brought with it a sense of dread, a palpable fear that gripped the hearts of Chicagoans. The city, known for its resilience and strength, was about to face a terror unlike any it had seen before. Fear. Richard Speck, a drifter with dead eyes and a chilling disregard for human life, etched his name into the city's history. He was a man whose very presence sent shivers down the spines of those who encountered him. His eyes, cold and devoid of empathy, were windows into a soul consumed by darkness. 8 young nurses, their futures bright, were snuffed out in one horrifying night. These women, dedicated to caring for others, had their lives brutally cut short. They were daughters, sisters, and friends, each with dreams and aspirations that would never be realized. Their loss was a wound that would never fully heal. Speck's rampage shocked the nation. Headlines screamed of the atrocity, and people across the country were gripped by a mix of horror and disbelief. How could such a monstrous act occur in a city like Chicago? The news spread like wildfire, and the nation mourned with the families of the victims. His name became synonymous with evil. Richard Speck was no longer just a man. He was a symbol of the darkest depths of human depravity. In court, his demeanor was chillingly calm, as if he were detached from the gravity of his actions. The trial captivated the public, and his face became a haunting reminder of the evil that lurks in the shadows. This is the story of his brutality, a story that delves into the mind of a killer, exploring the events that led to that fateful night. It is a tale of horror, but also of the resilience of a community that came together in the face of unimaginable tragedy. The story of the victims he left behind. Their memories live on in the hearts of those who knew them, and in the collective memory of a city that will never forget. The candlelight vigils, the memorials, and the stories shared by loved ones ensure that their light continues to shine, even in the darkest of times. Richard Speck wasn't born a monster, but his path seemed paved with bad choices. He was a troubled kid, bouncing from school to school, racking up a rap sheet longer than a city block, petty theft, forgery, even a stint in jail for stabbing a man. Each crime hardened him, molded him into the predator he would become. The warning signs were there. No one was listening. July 14th, 1966. A date that would become infamous in the annals of Chicago's history. The city, known for its vibrant culture and bustling streets, was about to be shaken to its core by an event so horrifying that it would leave an indelible mark on the collective memory of its residents. As the sun set and the city lights flickered on, an eerie calm settled over Chicago. The streets, usually filled with the sounds of laughter and life, seemed unusually quiet. It was a night that would forever be seared into Chicago's memory, a night when the ordinary turned into the extraordinary in the most terrifying way possible. Richard Speck, a man whose name would soon be synonymous with terror, armed with a knife and a chillingly calm demeanor, entered a townhouse. This was no ordinary building. It was a place where young women, full of dreams and aspirations, lived and studied. They were nurses, dedicated to helping others, unaware of the nightmare that was about to unfold. It was a nurses' dormitory, a sanctuary that was supposed to be safe. The women inside were preparing for another day of their noble profession, completely oblivious to the danger lurking just outside their door. The townhouse, which had always been a place of learning and camaraderie, was about to become the scene of an unspeakable horror. Speck held the women hostage, tying them up, terrorizing them for hours. The fear in their eyes was palpable, their hopes of escape dwindling with each passing minute. He moved with a calculated precision, his actions methodical and devoid of any empathy. The women, who had dedicated their lives to saving others, found themselves in a situation where no one could save them. One by one, he led them out, silencing their screams with brutal efficiency. The dormitory, once filled with the sounds of laughter and chatter, was now a place of silence and despair. Each step he took was a step closer to the unimaginable, each moment a descent into a darkness that seemed endless. The women, bound by fear and ropes, could do nothing but hope for a miracle that never came. The details are too gruesome to recount. The aftermath of that night left a scar on the city, a wound that would take years to heal. The crime scene, with its blurred photos and police tape, was a testament to the horror that had unfolded. Detectives, seasoned by years of experience, found themselves disturbed by the sheer brutality of the acts committed. The city mourned and the world watched in shock. But they serve as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk in the heart of man. Richard Speck was eventually captured and brought to justice, but the memories of that night lingered. The prison cell that held him was a stark contrast to the freedom he had taken from his victims. Behind bars, he became a symbol of the evil that can exist within humanity. The story of July 14, 1966, is not just a tale of horror, but a reminder of the resilience of a city and its people. It is a story that will never be forgotten, a night that will forever be etched in the history of Chicago. Every criminal makes a mistake. Speck's was as simple as it was stupid. He left a witness. Corazon Amurao, a Filipino exchange student, hid under a bed as Speck went about his gruesome business. Her testimony was crucial. She described his born-to-raise-hell tattoo. This small detail, a badge of bravado, became his undoing. Behind bars, life and death of a notorious killer. Justice was swift. Speck was found guilty. The trial was a media sensation, capturing the attention of the nation. The courtroom was packed with journalists and spectators, all eager to witness the proceedings. The evidence against Speck was overwhelming, and the jury took little time to reach a verdict. Guilty on all counts. The judge's gavel came down with a resounding thud, sealing Speck's fate. Sentenced to death. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. The death sentence was later commuted to life in prison. The decision sparked controversy and debate, with many feeling that justice had not been fully served. Speck's life behind bars began, a life that would be marked by infamy and notoriety. The prison cell door closed behind him, but his story was far from over. Behind bars, Speck was a celebrity of sorts. He reveled in his notoriety. The media couldn't get enough of him, and he was more than willing to oblige. Interviews, letters, and even fan mail poured in. Speck seemed to thrive on the attention, using it to maintain a sense of power and control. He became a master manipulator, playing the system and those around him to his advantage. He even boasted about his crimes in a chilling prison video. The footage, which later surfaced, showed Speck recounting his heinous acts with a disturbing lack of remorse. He seemed almost proud of what he had done, a chilling reminder of the darkness that resided within him. The video sent shockwaves through the public, reigniting the debate over his commuted sentence. Death, when it finally came in 1991, was anticlimactic. A heart attack. No last words. No remorse. Speck's end was as unremarkable as his life had been sensational. He passed away in the prison medical ward, his death barely making headlines. The inmate funeral procession was a quiet affair, attended by few. In the end, Speck's notoriety couldn't save him from the inevitable. His story serves as a grim reminder of the consequences of a life lived in infamy. The Speck legacy. A city still haunted. Richard Speck died in prison, but his shadow still hangs over Chicago. The townhouse where the murders took place? Demolished. Too painful a reminder. The families of the victims? Forever scarred, their lives irrevocably changed. Speck became a cautionary tale, proof that monsters aren't always hiding under the bed. Sometimes they walk among us. Inside the mind of a monster, exploring Speck's motives. What drove Richard Speck to commit such unspeakable acts? Was it a twisted upbringing? A thirst for power? Mental illness? Experts have debated for decades. Some point to his violent childhood, others to possible brain damage. The truth, like Speck himself, remains an enigma. A chilling reminder that some questions have no easy answers. The trial and conviction. Justice for 8 nurses. The trial of Richard Speck was a media circus. The nation watched, horrified yet captivated, as the details of his crimes unfolded. The evidence was overwhelming. Fingerprints, witness testimony, even Speck's own blood found at the scene. The jury wasted no time. Guilty on all counts. A small measure of justice for 8 innocent lives extinguished too soon. A culture of fear. Chicago in the Speck era. The Speck murders cast a long shadow over Chicago. The city, once vibrant and carefree, felt vulnerable. Parents locked their doors. Women were afraid to walk alone at night. The fear was palpable. It took years for the city to heal, to reclaim its sense of security. But the memory of that summer, of the monster who terrorized their streets, lingered long after the headlines faded. Remembering the victims, honoring their lives. In the wake of tragedy, it's easy to focus on the perpetrator. But the true victims of Richard Speck were the 8 young nurses whose lives he stole. They were daughters, sisters, friends. They had dreams, aspirations, a whole future ahead of them. Their memory lives on, not in the shadow of their killer, but in the hearts of those who loved them. They will never be forgotten.